Welcome to the BJ Show. Let's rock and roll. Rock and roll. Come on, everybody. Let's lose control. Brand John never wants to follow. Yeah, ready for the ride. It's the BJ Show. BJ Show.
It is the BJ Show. I am Brad, and that is John Combes. Good morning, John.
Good morning and happy Juneteenth, Brad.
We'll talk about that later. John is the guy that every single day of his life for the past, 23 years now?
Yeah, something like that.
Puts together this amazing, and I say amazing, capital A, capital M, et cetera, amazing website that it's funny. I was describing this to someone yesterday. They said, what is the John Combes website? I said, do you remember the Drudge Report back in the heyday? And they go, yeah. I go, it's the Drudge Report for Missouri. Essentially, would you still agree with that?
Yeah, sure. It was definitely modeled after the Drudge Report.
Right. I think you said one point in time you said that was your idea when you were into the Drudge Report. You thought, why doesn't somebody do that for Missouri?
Absolutely, it was, yeah.
Okay. He does this every day we're on the air. Every single day.
And not every day we're on the air, but I mean, you mean we do the top three every time we're on the air?
Yeah, every day we're on the air.
Gotcha.
Every day I'm on the air with you, we do the top three. I mean, we haven't not done it in months and months and months. I mean,
Yeah. I thought you meant that I do my website every day that we're on the air. When I do my website 7 days a week.
No, he does his website 24/7, 365 times 23. How many days is that? I'm gonna figure that out.
Oh, it's not a big deal, but I appreciate the intro, Brad.
365 times 23. You know, nobody can do math anymore, so we have to ask one of those Chinese kids because they tell you exactly what it is right off the top of their head. Okay, we started off with this guy. What's your name, sir?
I'm Casey Kasem.
And your job to do is what now?
We're on our way to the number one.
And we start with?
In third place.
Thanks for the generous lead-in, Brad. And, you talk about doing this for a few years and having some experience looking at the headlines. I had one of those experiences this morning where I looked at a headline and I was like, drats. And then I actually read the full story and I was like, the headline was a little misleading. I should probably tweak it when I put it on my website. Here's the original headline, Brad, from the Post-Dispatch on the opinion page. Lighter federal cannabis restrictions is a conservative idea. Now, I read this and I thought, this sounds like some pothead saying everybody should just toke up all day long in the carpool lane like it's the Francis Howell School District or something. But no, this is, when you dig a little closer, Brad, it's a pretty logical conservative argument for why Schedule 1 is not the place for marijuana, but Schedule 3 should be. And this piece, I buried the lead here, is brought to us by State Senator Nick Schroer, who lives in Defiance, near Defiance. And he explains in this piece, Brad, that marijuana today is still a Schedule 1 drug. It's up there with all the absolute worst stuff you can imagine that a human being could consume or smoke or inject or whatever. And Nick Schroer's point here is that as long as marijuana remains, let's use cannabis because we don't want YouTube to strike us a whole bunch here. Let's just say cannabis. As long as cannabis is Schedule 1, that keeps, for example, doctors and the Veterans Administration from suggesting that maybe it could be used for pain relief. It keeps a lot of research from being done. We also know that cannabis has a lot of restrictions in terms of banking and such. So Nick makes the argument in this piece that marijuana and cannabis should be rescheduled from Schedule 1 to something called Schedule 3. And that would mean that doctors could actually talk about it with their patients. And it has a whole lot of other benefits for folks in the cannabis industry. Now, I think the money line here is Nick says, let me be clear. I am not interested in promoting recreational drug use. However, I am interested in pragmatic reform. Supporting rescheduling does not mean a cannabis free-for-all. So, Brad, I'll leave it to people to visit my website and check it out. As usual, Brad, for folks who don't subscribe to the Post-Dispatch or who don't want to subscribe to the Post-Dispatch, you can read a paywall-free version on my website today. So, Brad, do you think it makes sense in 2025 to take cannabis from Schedule 1 right up there with the worst drugs imaginable, and make it Schedule 3?
Let me throw this out. Some people, I know you sort of explained it, but let's make it a little bit more explanatory, if that's a good word. The FDA has these schedules of drugs, and essentially the number one drug is essentially the super duper hard narcotic stuff, correct?
Yeah, that would be, I mean, I don't know how YouTube is about saying the name of these drugs, but it would be the hardest stuff that you could imagine. Maybe stuff that you would snort or that you would inject or that would probably kill you.
Well, no. I'm saying Schedule 1, meaning that if you go to the pharmacy, there's certain drugs that are very, very, very highly regulated legally. When I say, I'm saying legally. So in other words,
I get what you're saying. Yeah. I'm sorry. Yeah, you're right.
Schedule 1, if you go to the pharmacy, there are certain drugs that even to the point where sometimes when they prescribe them, the pharmacist is like, well, I don't know. You know what I'm saying? So
yeah, I thought Schedule 1 was stuff that was so bad that doctors didn't even prescribe it.
Oh, no. Schedule 1 is on the scheduling thing. That's the interesting part of this is the Schedule 1 is like the heavy duty stuff, the stuff that you need a prescription for. And that is the whole crazy thing about the first go around with marijuana in the state of Missouri. You had to essentially and that's how they were sort of skirting the issue, is essentially say, well, you had to have it medically required, even though you didn't have to have a prescription from your doctor. You could essentially get
I get what you're saying. Yeah, and so a Google search here shows me that Schedule 1 is heroin, LSD, ecstasy, and other drugs with no medical use.
Right. And then you've got Schedule 2, which is a little bit down the line, and Schedule 3 is more your Pepsid and stuff like. Well, not even. Well, there's a prescription form of a lot of these drugs. A lot of the drugs you can buy in the drugstore. And matter of fact, it's interesting. It's funny you should bring this up because I watched this video the other day of this lady who's a physician's assistant, and she was telling when your doctor prescribes a prescription for like a special ibuprofen, I think she said, that's 800 milligrams. And you can get the same thing by just taking 4 of the over-the-counter ones, which I thought to myself.
That's a pretty I think that underscores the fact that it's a pretty silly process.
Right.
Exactly what you're saying. I see what you're saying,
right.
Brad.
And the whole crazy thing about this is that because of the fact that the state, Missouri specifically, has essentially said, hey, it's okay now, but the feds are still going, no. And that's what Ricky Schroer is trying to get taken care of. Isn't that essentially the gist of the article?
Yeah, it's the idea of taking it from Schedule 1, which would prohibit even doctors from even talking about it, let's say, to Schedule 3, which would make it like, I believe, like anabolic steroids and things like that are considered Schedule 3.
Okay. My Brad, the libertarian, says, just make it all legal. But here's what you do. I've said this before, and I get people that eye roll on me. You have to get like in Illinois, you have to have a FOID, what they call a firearms ID card. We would do that in Missouri, where it'd be a drug ID card. And essentially what you do is it's like signing the back of your driver's license for your organ donor. And essentially what you do is you get your drug DOID, your DOID, and you get your drug over the counter, whatever it would be. You get your DOID card. And when you sign it, it says, and you have to sign it on the back, otherwise it's not valid, I hereby state that my drug use will not cost the state any money. If I become hooked, if I become incapacitated, there's no state or federal money would go to help me in my medical condition.
Not resuscitate
right.
either.
Not necessarily
just die.
Not necessarily do not resuscitate, but in other words, if somebody has an OD, and let's say the ambulance rolls on
We get you, Brad. We get you.
And they go, oh, look, this guy's got a DOID card, and they look at it, oh, well, hell, just leave him. And they just take off, that kind of thing. No, you don't like that?
I'm going to sound like a really crabby middle-aged man here, Brad, and I don't know why anyone think I would. But I was at a certain park in a certain county coaching a certain team at a certain base on Monday night, and a strong smell of cannabis drifts onto the field. And I turn around and I see a bunch of parents and grandparents and actually a trio of blonde MILFs, which was nice. But I digress. Anyway, and as we're coming off the field, another coach grabs me and goes, did you smell that? And I said, yeah. And I guess we deduced, Brad, that at this Little League field, people wouldn't be smoking out in the open, but they would go out to their car and they would hotbox it. And you know what? Police aren't going to do anything because it's recreational today, right? So just smoke up at a Little League field where you have literally hundreds of kids. Why not, Brad?
John, can I give my opinion on that? And I think you already
Please
know.
do.
That is so wrong. I mean, it's just so wrong.
Yeah, and it's like what kind of Hoosier behavior, and maybe they were black, so maybe they weren't Hoosiers, but like what kind of Hoosier behavior do you think it's by what stretch do you think it's okay to smoke weed? And I've told you before, Brad, the only downside of going, let's say, to Six Flags is you get out of your car in the parking lot and it's just a cloud of weed smoke.
John,
Like, who gets high before they get on a ride at Six Flags?
well, look, I agree with you. It's to the point where if you have to go through life being high, going through life, it's like, okay. I'll never understand it. I don't get it. I have friends, once again, I'm a guy in the radio business. I work with Terry Fox, who's no longer with us.
You worked with pig vomit, Brad.
I work with pig. And let me tell you, he had a serious drug problem. Cocaine was his drug of choice. He's dead now. And see, the crazy thing about it is all these guys I worked with back in the day, there's another picture that somebody's unearthed of me like in 1974, 75 at a van show. And it's the entire staff of the KSLQ staff. And I go like, okay, he's dead. And then once again, these are all guys who were serious drug users. Okay, I've said it.
While we get into story number 2, I want you to maybe go on mute, and then I know you need to toot a few lines of Mountain Dew. So you can do that during story number 2, Brad.
Up a notch to number 2.
How did you know?
Speaking of radio guys, but guys who are actually on the straight and narrow, your friend Mike Elam was a guest host yesterday on the Mark Reardon Show on 97.1 FM, and he had U.S. Congressman Bob Onder. Now, Bob Onder is probably best known for being the star of Brad's Top 3 yesterday in B Block. That was June 18th, 2025. But once again, Brad, I digress. Bob Onder had a chat with Mike Elam about a host of things. They talked about Iran versus Israel. They talked about, Biden's auto pen. They talked about the fact that Biden had significant decline in cognitive ability. They talked about the Tennessee transgender ruling. But perhaps most importantly and newsworthy, Bob Onder says that the members of the U.S. House are still being told by leadership that the big, beautiful bill will pass by July 4th. And Bob Onder brings up, whether it's Jefferson City or whether it's Washington, D.C., why does everything have to happen at the 11th hour? Why does everybody put it off to the very last minute? Why is there so much brinksmanship? I don't know. I mean, I guess Bob was being a little bit philosophical there. But I would suggest folks listen to it for a good back and forth between Mike Elam and Bob Onder. I have that link up today, Brad.
I'm nothing against Mark Reardon because I know him somewhat personally. Him and I have texted back and forth and talked.
But what do you think about his schedule, Brad?
He's never there anymore. He's always on vacation or gone. I'm thinking to myself, what does he get? Like 26 weeks of vacation? And see,
do you think that maybe somebody that spent a career in the radio business working for a for-profit company deserves the right to take 12 weeks of vacation a year? Like I do. Like if you put in that time and you're that valuable to the radio station, take a week off a month. Like I think he's earned it.
I say no. And
well, we know how you feel, Brad.
John,
and Brad, I remind you gently, because I think you're a wonderful man. Many times your decisions are based on turning necessity into a virtue. And if you had the ability to go on vacation for a week, a month, or you had the ability to retire, your views on vacations and retirement might be a little bit different, wouldn't they, Brad?
John, I know you don't go to fast food, but you do go to Chick-fil-A, right?
I do love Chick-fil-A, yes.
Okay, let's say that Chick-fil-A decided, you know what? Us Chick-fil-A people at the store, we work so hard. We're going to take 26 weeks off. As a matter of fact, what we're going to do is we're only going to open Chick-fil-A every other week. How long?
I like that idea, Brad. And you know what? Consumers could deal with it. And if your Chick-fil-A is closed, then you could choose another place, Brad. And the difference is Mark Reardon has someone competent and awesome, not just competent, but awesome, and Mike Elam to come on. Was the show on yesterday, Brad, or was there just a guest host?
No. It was Mike. But see, you see, once again, I'm a radio guy. You just said the magic words. If Chick-fil-A is closed, they can go somewhere else. Well,
yeah, why not?
Nothing against Mike Elam, our Ryan Reckert, or whoever fills in for Mark Reardon. But matter of fact, just on the air right now on 97.1, because it's a holiday. We've got what's her name? She's from Las Vegas. And she's filling in on 97.1. Okay.
Is it Britney Spears?
No, it's not Britney Spears. No,
Billie Eilish. She's in Las Vegas
The
this
point
week,
being is you have to have some consistency. And typically what happens in the radio business, everybody goes on vacation from like the last 2 weeks of the year during, before Christmas and during Christmas and up till the first of the year. That's vacation time in the radio business.
Hey, and you know what, Brad? Now, Brad, I'm going to deliver this as gently as possible. Do you think the good folks at 97.1 want Brad's advice on making money and running a radio station?
No, because of the fact that if they did, they'd do much better. Hey, John.
Hey, you know who can't do much better? The subject of story number 1 with 3 minutes left.
The number one.
Speaking of cognitive decline, and I don't just mean Brad Hildebrand, but I mean in story number 2, we talked about Bob Onder weighing in on Joe Biden's auto pen. Yesterday, Senator Eric Schmitt and Senator John Cornyn decided to start holding. Let me rephrase this. I got so excited about the punchline here that I stepped on my own punchline. John Cornyn and Eric Schmitt opened up hearings on Joe Biden's cognitive decline. And the headline from the Post-Dispatch's Joe Holliman today, Missouri's Eric Schmitt sets up hotline seeking tips about Joe Biden's mental decline. Yes, there is an email address where if you happen to know a little something about Joe Biden's cognitive decline, you can email Biden tips at schmitt.senate.gov. Now, Joe Holliman notes the Democrats weren't too pleased about this. And Dick Durbin from Illinois, he showed up at the hearing briefly. And he says, quote, apparently, armchair diagnosing former President Biden is more important than issues of grave concern. So I think we all know, Brad, that Joe Biden was pretty much checked out during his administration. Bob Onder talked about the questionable prostate diagnosis. Joe Holliman in this piece notes what you bring up quite often, Brad, which is the Jake Tapper flip-flop on Biden's mental state. So if you happen to have seen Joe Biden looking lost or confused, or as Bob Onder points out, Joe Biden once coming off a stage and trying to shake hands with a plant, you can email Biden tips at schmitt.senate.gov.
Or as Mr. Hawley, our U.S. Senator, said, he got lost, according to the Secret Service agents, he got lost in his closet in the White House, right?
Yeah. Hey, listen, he wouldn't be the first Democrat to be stuck in the closet.
The whole thing is, what's sad about this is that Trump won, okay, the 2024 election. He should have won by like 80%. You know what I'm saying?
I do know exactly what you mean.
I mean, because of the fact that, God, yesterday on this very station, they were playing Kamala Harris clips and the infamous school bus introduction. Have you ever heard that one?
No, remind me what that is.
She's somewhere at some education thing, and she goes on and on for 2 minutes about school buses. And she's like, oh, school buses. I love school buses. School buses are yellow, and I love school buses.
I don't know that one. That's crazy.
Yeah, it's bizarre. It's going like, what is this? And you know what? The three guys that do the afternoon show on this very station, Mark Lee Van Camp and Robbins, they always refer to her as the day drinker.
Yeah, she usually sounds like she's tipsy. Now that could be her normal personality in her defense.
I don't know. I mean, God, let's move on. Okay, you know what? What's coming up next?
Oh yeah, hey, day number 6, Brad. It's amazing.
Of what is it, John? Tell me.
It is Brad's Top 3, and you can find it at bradstop3.com, which now features 0.0 plagiarized stories with no attribution or acknowledgement. Way to go, Brad.
I'm still working on that. That's, like I said,
way to be a professional.
I'm using that as a test bed, but the Westplex News site should debut back in a day or so. Okay.
Oh, yeah, okay.